I, 29, female, got married to my longtime boyfriend, 27, male, this year. We come from really different families. He comes from a big family with two brothers and one older sister. He's the youngest child, so he's always been the apple of everyone's eye in his family, but he's not spoiled at all. I, on the other hand, have no siblings. Growing up, I didn't have the best relationship with my parents, and we grew apart as I got older. It wasn't that I hated them or anything, but they were just too much to deal with sometimes. They were the kind of parents who cared more about what everyone else thought of us and how we were perceived. They'd rather people just think we were a happy family than just, try to live like a happy family. When I was a teenager, I found out that my dad had been cheating on my mother and was horrified to learn that. I'd seen my dad with a woman I didn't recognize, holding hands outside a restaurant. I didn't hide it from my mom, and I told her as soon as I got home. She was furious, but not at my dad, at me. She told me that I must never reveal stuff like that to anyone, and I was grounded for 2 days for bringing it up. So, yeah, I learned pretty early on that not speaking to my parents, unless we had guests or were in the company of other people, was the way to lead an easy life in my household. My parents were rich, so everything got paid for, and I never had to worry about that. But there was just never any emotional connection or bond I had with them. It was a nice change of pace for me when my husband introduced me to his family where they didn't grow up that rich, but still loved each other and literally looked as happy as if they were in a movie or something. Even at my wedding, my parents didn't seem emotional at all and were just sort of there while my husband's family was overjoyed. My husband's family has taught me what family feels like, and I love them like my own, just as they love me. So I decided to throw a dinner party for them today. I love cooking, but at my parents' house, they never cared for anything I made and preferred to have food prepared by our cook since they were more used to it. My husband, however, loved it when I cooked, and so I decided to cook for his family as well. They were super excited about it, and very honestly, so was I. The only issue here is that I'd completely forgotten that my parents' 25th wedding anniversary was on the same day. It had completely slipped my mind, and I'd only realized it a few hours before the party when I was going through my mail and found the invite there. Now, I couldn't shift the date of the dinner party, but my husband's older sister lives in Europe and was here for only a few more days. If I had delayed it any more, that would mean she wouldn't be able to attend, and I really wanted her to be there. So I considered skipping my parents' anniversary party since, well, it's not like they'd miss me there. And moreover, I was trying to do something for the family that seems to care about me, so I don't think that's wrong. I knew that my parents would definitely be upset that I missed it, but not because their only daughter didn't come, more because it'd raise awkward questions from the guests. But I went with my gut feeling and decided to skip my parents' anniversary party. I tried to get through to them to inform them that I wouldn't be attending, but neither of them responded. I guessed that they were both busy, so I emailed them that I won't be coming instead. But I didn't tell them that I'm hosting my in laws instead, though, since I knew that would piss them off a lot, as it would make it seem like I chose my in laws over my own parents, and that would look weird to other people. Towards 6 in the evening, half an hour before my husband's family was supposed to show up, my mother called me up to ask why I wasn't attending as she just opened her mail. I told her that I had important work to attend to and that I was sorry that I had to miss the party. But she wasn't having it and told me that I absolutely had to attend since this was a really important event for them. And it would be really strange to celebrate it without their only daughter. For a split second, I thought she'd miss me, but then she said that she needed me to be there since she didn't want people asking her why I hadn't shown up and thinking that we had a fallout or something. I told her that my decision was final and hung up without bothering to wait for a reply. I had a lot of stuff cooking and I couldn't waste my time arguing with my mom over something as petty as this. After that, she texted me saying that she would drop by later that evening anyway, as she had important business to discuss with me. I replied and told her not to come, but she didn't respond anymore and I forgot about it. I'd hoped that everything would go smoothly and I was able to have my first dinner party successfully because this really meant the world to me. But my mother, true to her nature, didn't let that happen. I had my in laws come over for the dinner party, and while it started off on a happy note, it ended as a total disaster. We were having fun until dinner was served, and they even loved what I had made, and it was all going smoothly until my mom dropped by. When my husband's family showed up, they brought wine and flowers for me, which was sweet. By then, I'd finished most of my cooking, and it was just a brisket that was still cooking. Before dinner, we drank and had a total blast in the living room, just sitting around and chatting, and I truly felt like I belonged. Even at the dinner table, nobody was on their phones, and we were all living in the moment. My husband's family loved my cooking and made it a point to compliment me several times. We were just about to start with dessert, brownies with vanilla ice cream, when the doorbell rang. We weren't expecting anyone, so it came as quite a surprise to me. My husband opened the door, and my mother stormed in, slightly inebriated and pissed off. She'd shoved my husband aside really hard while storming in, and I rushed to his side to check if he was all right since he'd banged against the wall pretty hard. After I made sure he was okay, I turned to my mother, who had already started screaming at me about how I was embarrassing her and myself in front of all her friends and relatives. I was really confused about what she was referring to when she showed me a picture of me laughing with everyone else in the living room that had been taken earlier that evening. My husband's sister had uploaded it on Facebook and tagged me, which is why it had shown up on my profile as well. I guess people saw that and concluded that I'd chosen to stay at home and spend time with my husband's family rather than attend my own parents' 25th wedding anniversary. My mom started yelling at me and asked me if I had any idea how embarrassing all of this was for her, and that she had to pretend that she knew about this when one of her gossip mongering friends pointed this out to her. My sister in law tried to apologize, but my mom cut her off and told her to shut her mouth while she was talking. That was absolutely unacceptable, and I told her that she couldn't speak to my guests this way. I reminded her that I told her not to come today, but she said that she could do whatever she wanted to and slammed the sheet of paper onto the dinner table. At first, it just looked like a bunch of numbers, but when I started reading it properly, it was a track of all the major amounts of money that my parents had spent on me so far. Stuff like my education and my first car were included, and the final amount came up to around 800,000. I was in shock and looked at her while she declared that, now that I had chosen my family. I needed to pay her and my dad back for everything that they'd invested in me so far since I'd failed to be a good daughter. I felt humiliated and so small at that moment. I didn't even have anything to say, so I just stood there silently and cried. My mother continued with her tirade, but my husband had had enough and told her to leave me the hell alone. The rest of his family was also outraged to see her act out like this and asked her to leave. She left, but not before reminding me that whether I like it or not, I owe my family certain things and that I'd better not try to pull a stunt like this in the future ever again. It's been almost a day since that happened, and my in laws made sure that they comforted me and even asked me if I needed them to stay for a while. While it was sweet of them to offer, I declined since I just needed some alone time, and they respected that as well. My husband consoled me for a while yesterday until I seemed less upset, and only then did he go to sleep. I'm just so frustrated. I was having such a great time with my in laws, and my family couldn't even tolerate that. It's like they're so miserable themselves that they can't stand the thought of me being happy either. I can't live like this anymore, and I just need to do something about this. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'll definitely be speaking to my lawyer soon. This absolutely has to end somewhere. They don't own me just because they paid for stuff when I was a kid like any normal parent would. I'm just here to ensure that I'm all right. So, AITA for deciding to skip my parents' anniversary to host my in laws instead? Update 1. After what happened yesterday, I realized that it was time that I told my husband the truth about my relationship with my parents. I'd always been a little ashamed of that part of my life since it made me feel like I'd failed at being a good daughter somehow. But now that I'm a grown woman who's seen what a healthy, happy family looks like, I don't think I was the problem. My cold and detached parents were, and I didn't need to be embarrassed of anything anymore. So I ended up telling him about everything, and he was pretty shocked to learn all of this. He'd always assumed that I didn't have a particularly close relationship with my parents, but never thought that it went this deep. I even told him about the incident where I caught my dad cheating on my mom and she got mad at me and not him. He was shocked that I got into trouble for that as a kid and spent the next few hours comforting me and making sure I was okay, since this was a pretty huge deal for me to confess. I did feel lucky that I had such a wonderful husband to take care of me. While I've discussed it with my husband and he's not a fan of getting the law involved since he thinks that's too extreme, he thinks that in my case, legal intervention is necessary at this point. I've also made up my mind that no matter what, I'm not paying back even a single penny to my parents. Come what may, I'm not going to let them demand money from me like that and act like it's a totally normal thing to ask for. They paid for stuff because they had to and could afford to. As parents, that's literally the bare minimum that you do for your child. They cannot hold that against me in any way, and it's not even like they need the money. My dad's company is flourishing, and if they can throw a lavish anniversary party, then I'm assuming they're in a good place financially. This is all just a way to keep me in check and under their thumbs. They brought up the money they've spent on me so far only to humiliate me in front of my in-laws and purely out of spite. I haven't decided on whether I want to go through with this legally and completely cut them out of my life, and I'm still on the fence about it. But if they start any more drama with me, then I'll be taking legal action against them for sure. Maybe not something like emancipation, but a restraining order against them at the very least. Meanwhile, my husband's family, who were all present to witness the unfortunate scene that took place a few days back, were all kind enough to say that they would be more than happy to pitch in and contribute to the debt if that's what I needed to get my parents off my back. While that's incredibly sweet of them, I declined since, like I already said, I'm not repaying the money. My parents didn't do me any favors by spending money on me that was the bare minimum, and I don't think I owe them anything at all. And on top of that, just the fact that his family was willing to go to such lengths for me is enough. I don't need them to do it, even though they insist that they'd be quite glad to help. I truly got so lucky that I have such a wonderful husband and in-laws. Update 2. A few days have passed since the last update, and today my mother reached out to me a few hours ago, but it wasn't to apologize. Merely to demand that I throw a party in my parents' honor as well and post it on social media to make up for not showing up earlier. This is all just basically to ensure that her friends don't gossip about how I'm choosing my new in-laws over my own parents and making fun of her. So just something to protect her reputation. I told her point blank that I wasn't going to do anything of the sort and that she needed to stop calling me or even expecting anything from me in the first place. She had no right to even demand such things from me after she and my father pushed me away my entire life, and now they want me to put on a show for the world to see what a happy family we are. Yeah, that's not happening. I also told her that I have no regrets that I skipped their party to host my in laws, as it's pretty obvious who values me more, and it's definitely not them. My mother was outraged and put my dad on the phone, who said that he'd already given me the option to either pay them back for everything and cut ties with them, or continue to do as they said. I let him know that this tactic wasn't going to help, and they couldn't push me around and manipulate me anymore with such threats. If they really wanted the money back, then they could send a legal notice and sue me for it, which I knew for a fact they wouldn't do because that'd make them look like awful parents who sue their own daughter just for money that they chose to spend for her sake. This pissed them off pretty bad, and they told me that I was misbehaving, as if I was still a teenager who could be grounded and not a grown, independent woman. They told me that I had to do some damage control and that they didn't care what I did or how I did it. I'm not doing anything of the sort because it's literally ridiculous. I'm not pretending to throw a party to surprise my parents after I skipped their anniversary party on purpose. It's not my fault they're crazy and obsessive about how they appear to other people, but I'm not entertaining any of that now. As a matter of fact, I've decided that I'm going to expose them to everything if they bother me anymore. I've told them more than enough times that I don't want them calling or visiting me anymore, and if they refuse to accept it, then that's really on them. If they don't want people to gossip behind their backs, then they should quit being so dramatic and obnoxious. I'm just one call or text away from exposing exactly what sort of weirdos they are online, and then everyone will know what I've had to live with my entire childhood. Update 3. 3 days have passed since the last update, and of course, my parents just can't respect my boundaries and think I'm a puppet that would just dance to their tune. So they called me up a few hours ago, once again, and even after I declined it several times in a row, they just kept calling. I even blocked their numbers, but they're so freaking deranged that they actually got a new number just to call me. I'm just lucky they didn't decide to drop by. They asked me pretty casually about what I had in mind for the party, as if I'd agreed to any of it at all. When I reminded them that I told them very clearly that there would be no party, they told me that they'd pay for it if that's what the issue was. I was literally in disbelief over the audacity and the ludicrousness of the whole situation. I told them that if they call me again, I just file a restraining order against them, and they started bickering with me, saying that they raised me and this is no way to treat one's aging parents. My parents are hardly elderly and helpless, and I don't feel guilty about doing this to them at all. After a while, I just stopped arguing with them out of sheer frustration and decided to expose them like I'd made up my mind earlier. It took a lot of courage since I knew that the consequences of this would not be pretty at all, but it just had to be done. I was sick of my parents thinking that they had the right to push me around and treat me like I was their property, even after they'd practically ignored me my entire life. So I typed out a long rant about how my parents treated me my entire childhood and now expected me to do what they said just so that we could still maintain the facade of a perfect family. I also mentioned my dad's cheating and my mother's reaction to it. I haven't been able to get over the unfairness of it all, and I don't think I ever will. After writing that post, I felt like a load had been lifted off of my shoulders, and when I hit the post button, I finally felt free. I didn't even care about how it would affect me or my parents. I was just glad that it was done. I'm sure that this will permanently ruin my relationship with my parents, and I truly hope that it happens since I just can't take the thought of having to deal with them for the rest of my life. They've been a nightmare to grow up with, and as much as I wanted to believe that they'd change someday, they won't. And that's just the fact of the matter. But yeah, anyway, it's done. I've also decided to file for a restraining order against them in a few days. My husband and his family have also mentioned that they're going to support me in whatever way possible because they've witnessed firsthand the kind of meanness that my parents are capable of and are really happy that I've decided to cut them off entirely. Update 4. So it's been a couple of days since I posted, and oh boy, did my phone start blowing up. Most of it has been notifications from my friends and extended family and husband's family commenting supportive things on my post, but a lot of it has been extreme levels of hate from my parents' friends who are actually blaming me for how things turned out and are saying that I had no business speaking about my family's private business on a public platform like this. My parents are obviously furious and have been calling and texting me relentlessly, but I'm not answering any of it. I guess they haven't dropped by since they're scared that I might even spill more of their reality online, which is good. They should learn to stay away. I'm done putting up with their bull crap. And I've filed for a restraining order against them as well to ensure that they can't harass me or come around me anymore ever again. My husband has been so supportive of me so far, and even my husband's family has been applauding me for how brave I was to finally stand up to my parents. My mother has texted me several times to express how disappointed she is in me and that this is not how she raised me, which is ironic given how she didn't raise me at all. My dad has told me that he'll cut me out of his will as I exposed his affair, but I couldn't care less about that. I'll be closing out on a huge inheritance, that's for sure. But I'm a doctor and quite a successful one at that, so I'm not too worried about money. I'm not about to keep my mouth shut just for money. He's a cheater, and people should know just how big of a sham their marriage is. And to be honest, not just their marriage, but literally every freaking thing about my parents was fake. And all that they do is an act. I'm just glad that I don't have to put up an act with them anymore, and I'm free of this. I've even decided to take a family vacation, but with my husband and my in laws after all of this is done, since I really need to de stress. And yes, they're my family as well, even if it's the family I chose for myself. If anything, they're the ones who taught me what a real family does and stood by me. We've already booked the tickets to Australia, and as soon as the legal proceedings for the restraining order are done with, we're all out of here, and I couldn't be happier about it, honestly. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.